Hi, I'm Samantha Barry. I'm the editor-in-chief at Glamour, and we're going to have a discussion in a little while about this amazing project. But first of all, thank you all for coming here tonight. I know there's some girls from the Lower East Girls Club and Girls Right Now and some Glamour audience in the room, so we're really happy that you have taken an hour out of your Friday night to learn more about this. But before we kick off, I just want to set the scene with really a quick look at what this is 18 project in the making.
The video!
Yeto 18
و این 18 سالگی منه.
This is 18.
يا ابو 18
وهاد هو 18.
This is 18.
We're going to go down the line and have everybody introduce themselves really quickly.
I'm Julie Lozano. I go to NYU, and I was the photographer for this project. Well, one of the many.
Hi everyone, I'm Maryclare Chinedo. I'm a sophomore at Brown University, and I was Julie's subject for This is 18.
I'm Jessica Bennett. I'm gender editor at The Times, and I was one of the massive groups of editors on this project.
And I'm Anya Strzemien. I am a deputy editor on the styles section at The Times, and I was also one of the editors on the project.
So let's kick off with Jessica and Anya. Why 18? It is this number that we hold on to as that journey into adulthood. In the piece itself, when it came out, somebody beautifully described it as that grey area. Why did you guys pick 18, and in particular women as women around the world at 18 as the subject topic of this?
Yeah, I mean, we really felt like 18 is a rite of passage in many ways. You know, you're sort of at this cusp between girlhood and adulthood. We ourselves, as we were talking about the project, we kept kind of toggling between calling the subjects and photographers girls, or are they young women, or are they women? And the UN actually defines an 18-year-old as a girl. But, you know, there's all sorts of rights that change when you turn 18. Suddenly you can vote. In some countries, you can join the military. You know, there are places where you can sign for an apartment and get a credit card, and yet at the same time, many people live with their parents. There were a lot of contracts and releases involved in this project, which our wonderful project manager, Sharon, who's also acting as photographer tonight, managed. And when you're dealing with 21 young women in a dozen time zones, speaking many languages, using many social media platforms, there were a lot of different ways to communicate, but it was interesting because everyone could sign their own legal documents, and yet parents were involved.
But let's talk about that, because it's not only you guys made a concerted decision not only to have the subjects be young women, but really quite ambitiously the photographers, which adds a whole other layer as a project. So Anya, for you're why did you make that decision to see through the lens of young female photographers rather than the amazing award-winning New York Times photographers?
Well, because historically, the photographers of men, women, children, adults have been male, and we thought, you know, we should, instead of having the male gaze on these young women, we should have their peers photograph them, because a lot is expressed by the photographer. So we wanted their point of view, literally and figuratively.
How easy was it to get that global group of young female photographers? Like, how easy was it to put that together?
It was a bit of a dig, you know, not because there are not many talented young women around the world, but how do you source them? So we had, you know, the wonderful thing about working for the Times is you have this network of photojournalists all around the globe. And so we began, our photo editor, Sandra Stevenson, who couldn't be here tonight, she began by reaching out to a lot of nonprofits we work with globally, a lot of photojournalists that we know in different regions, and asking them for recommendations. And it was sort of like this network. And once we located the photographers, then we asked them to actually source the subjects. You probably remember doing this, Julie, but we asked everyone to submit 3 candidates for who they wanted to photograph. And these didn't have to be strangers, they could be people that you knew. And the idea was really to showcase the lives of teen girls in the other girls' communities. And so we kind of liked the aspect that there was some familiarity there, whereas in a normal journalistic project, there's some distance between source and subject.
So tell us, how did you come to pick Maryclare as your subject in this process, and what was it like when you got the call from the New York Times to do a photo?
I mean, I was really overwhelmed when I sat down with I can't even remember his name anymore, but he came to the BDC, Bronx Documentary Center, and he was like, "Do you want to do this project for the Times?" And I was like, oh my God, I've only ever been interviewed for the Times. I've never actually photographed for them. So it was so overwhelming, but it was also such a beautiful feeling to be able to have that like privilege to like represent the Bronx in a way, because I chose 3 people from like different boroughs, and Maryclare was like my subject for the Bronx. So I was really stoked when they said, yeah, we want Maryclare. I was like, yes. Like, so
how was that process for you? You know, as a young photographer, what when you went out to photograph Maryclare, what did you want to capture?
I guess I just wanted to capture her in her day-to-day life, like just being herself, because I thought that obviously that was the point of this project, and I was really happy to just like spend time with her family and gain that access, because it takes a lot for a subject to become comfortable with you. And I think that the more comfortable like a subject is, and the more you see them as human, the more access they give you, which makes the picture that much more beautiful.
And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's outside here, but Maryclare is one of the images that is shown out here. And I think what was interesting when I looked at it, for you, Maryclare, it was really the cusp of your life was about to change. You talked about how you really weren't allowed out of the house a lot. Your mom didn't allow you to do a lot of stuff, and you were just about to embark on your college career. Did you feel like this was a really important moment in time for you, this turning 18?
Yeah, definitely. Like, as everyone, I think, experienced, you want to turn 18 because you think it's like, I don't know, you think some magical transformation will occur when you turn 18 or something. I don't know. But, yeah, it just happened to be that when I turned 18, like 2 months later or so, I ended up going to college. And that was really interesting for me, being that I was the oldest daughter, actually the oldest child, actually, of my parents. And, like, seeing how, I guess, their strictness slowly, like, lessened as they realized I was about to go to Rhode Island, which is like about 4 hours away, and how they began to trust that they raised me well enough to make the right decisions when I go there and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely really cool.
How was it to see yourself in the New York Times?
Ooh. It was really cool. Actually, so funny story. When Julie first reached out to me, I didn't know it was for the New York Times. Like, I thought it was just like a project or whatever. And then like I started getting these emails and I'm like, what is this? Like, what do you mean New York Times? And yeah. So when the newspaper came out and like the digital version came out, I was on campus and like I felt like people were looking at me funny, but I wasn't sure. So my first class was Spanish, and then I walked in, and you just see my face on like the projector, and I was like, wow. Like, they're like, Maryclare, you're on the New York Times. I'm like, yeah. It was really cool. Yeah, it was just really nice. I don't know. And like, even to this day, people are still surprised. Like, they'll just be looking at like, I don't know how they find it now, but they're just like, Maryclare, you're on the New York Times. And I was like, yeah. Like, but it was definitely really interesting and cool.
So when I looked at your story, and it was interesting because it did feel like a real snapshot of your moment in time, leaving the Bronx, going to Rhode Island, you learning to cook. Did you learn how to cook? Okay, we'll get back to that. We'll try that in a while. Fact checking the cooking.
I mean, it's a work in progress. We're gonna get there.
But you were amongst these amazing stories of young girls the same age as you around the world. Anything surprise you about their stories?
Yeah, the one that really surprised me was I believe her name is Victory. I'm not sure, but she was a Nigerian, and as a Nigerian, it was interesting seeing her in the kitchen cooking at 18 with her mom and stuff. Wow, I should really be doing that too, probably. Hide this from my mom, because if she sees an Igbo person in Nigeria at my age doing this, she would, But I guess it was really interesting.
Some of the 18-year-olds were married. Some of them had very different. What were the other stories that stood out for you, both of the other 18-year-old girls?
For me, it was I'm not sure what country, but it was the one with the girl that was pregnant, or she was expecting, I think. And
there was one who was a mother from Mississippi.
Yeah, it was the one that was a mom from Mississippi, and I just found that so beautiful because my mom had me when she was 19, so it was just looking at my mom almost, and it was really beautiful because it's just like you said, it's this gray area where you're just going to parties and doing your homework, and then suddenly you know somebody that is now this a mother. So I thought it was really amazing to see that variety of stories.
I think the important thing that Anya and Jessica really wanted to do in this project, or which came across at least as somebody that consumed it, was to try to pull back the curtain of not what people's perception of 18-year-old girls are, but rather what it actually is. Maryclare, what do you think is the most, what do the media or photographers or people in the news get wrong about 18-year-old girls?
Ooh.
Or just teen girls.
Yeah, just teen girls.
I guess that we're not really, active, so I feel they still see us as children in some sense. When we're about to vote, and they're oh, what do you know about this type of stuff? Or I guess probably because we're still in high school technically at 18 and things like that, they undermine our ability, or our judgment in certain things. But I think that's wrong. That at 18, I do think that we know what's going on. We're not in the shadows, and I think that's something that.
Jessica, when you started taking back in, and Anya, the photographs and the stories and the videos, what was the thread that united all of these 18-year-old stories?
We were just talking about this. I mean, it was so interesting because, first of all, I think the two of us at 18 were sneaking out of our parents' houses, smoking cigarettes. I think both getting ready to go to college. I wasn't particularly politically active. I didn't call myself a feminist back then. And so the immediate thing I think we noticed, and this was what we expected, I think that young women are often sort of diminished or given lower expectations in the way that they're presented in the media than we should give them credit for. And so these are incredibly ambitious, bright, politically active, social justice driven, call themselves feminists, care about things like global warming, think really critically about how much time they spend on phones and what's that doing to their communication abilities. And it's not just scrolling through Instagram all day, it's thinking really critically about what that does to human relationships. And so it was interesting to see, across time zones and cultures and oceans, that there were these little threads between them, things that they worried about. Things.
What did they worry about? Climate change came up a lot, right? Yep. Which I think if you talk to some, I think I've worked in newsrooms a lot of my life, and I think the conversation often is how do we get people to care about climate change, or how do we make it sexy enough for people to want to talk about it? But it seems with your generation, they're really talking about it.
Yeah, the climate change was definitely one of the themes, violence against women, gun violence. Also, a theme was how much they love their phones. So they weren't just scrolling through Instagram, but they were on their phones a lot too. And they worried about being on their phones too much.
Exactly. So. Mothers, that was really interesting. We asked who did you go to for advice, and moms was
Mine is
overwhelmingly.
here in the second row. Oh. She's from the Bronx too.
Oh, hello.
What do you guys worry about, Julie, Maryclare? What do you guys worry about? Keeps you up at night.
You go first.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, definitely climate change. But I guess I'd second like violence against women, and honestly, just like having a platform for women in politics. And it's really nice to just like start seeing that in Congress, like start seeing like women like team up and like start talking about like a lot of these issues that we always talk about. And now it's really nice to have that representation.
Did your how did your parents react when the piece came out?
My mom like hugged me and she cried. It was really sweet. And she just like she comes home every day and she's like, I told my boss about you, and she's just like always telling me like, oh yeah, like she'll meet somebody on the street and she'll be like, oh yeah, like my daughter shot for the New York Times. she'll find a way to like put that in there.
Have you done a lot of photography since?
Yeah, every day.
What that's good. What in particular is it? People, what do you want to concentrate in terms of what do you want to focus on with your photography?
Well, most recently over the summer, I shot. I've been planning this for a few years, and I think I'm gonna make this an ongoing thing. But I was really interested in just shooting like scenes in the Bronx, more specifically summer scenes. So this summer, I started this project called Summer in the Hood, and I've just been like shooting like portraits and just like stills of like everyday scenes in the Bronx, and I've been thinking of just expanding it like to Brooklyn and Queens, but that's what I've been shooting over the summer.
Can't wait to see it. Anya, what did you find out from this next generation of photographers? What was do they all shoot in video as well as still? What did you get from this generation of photographers that you used for this project?
We learned about social platforms we didn't even know existed, and also like I actually like feel very hopeful after doing this project about the rising generation, because you can see how socially conscious they are and engaged they are. I was not talking like this when I was 18.
No, I got that as well. There's an optimism throughout the whole piece, which is, I think, one thing that comes across in the whole project is, you know, they're 18-year-old girls have many struggles and many new ones that we didn't have, but it felt like the whole piece was quite optimistic. Probably because of your generation. What do you want people to take away from this project?
I think that, I think there's a few things. I think that the importance of representation, both in front of and behind the lens, like we could have done this project with like seasoned photojournalists, but we thought it was really important to have young women representing themselves. And so I think that's something that I hope we will see more and more. And I think we're seeing it more on social media. We're seeing it in different magazines like yours. So that was one thing that I think, will persist.
Yeah, I agree.
And Maryclare, what was it like sharing your life with a New York Times audience? You talked about how your friends were talking about it. Did you get reaction from the New York Times audience or people reaching out to you?
Oh, yeah, actually. So the day it was released, I got a couple of emails from Brown alumni in STEM offering, women, of course, in STEM, that were offering themselves as resources and saying that they understand, the struggles of being a female in STEM and how they, will be there for me if I need them. A couple of people messaged me on Instagram about like their relation to me not being able to cook, and I felt that. But yeah, just like a lot of response from people that I didn't even know, and I guess it felt nice knowing that people were able to relate to my story, and yeah.
And this was cool though. You guys all talk to each other now, right? Don't you have an Instagram group? So across languages, across time zones.
Yeah, there's a group chat on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
What do you talk about there?
Well, we talked about phones a lot, right? So what is your relationship with your phones, you guys? Julie?
I honestly hate getting the message on my phone that's like, oh, your screen time has added 2 hours since last week, and I'm like, oh man, like, damn, that sucks. Like,
are you setting limits for yourself?
Yeah, honestly, like when I see that message, it makes me just like want to interact with my friends that much more. Like, it just makes me want to just like put it down and just like actually like experience something with them, because although like having access to just like communication, like it's amazing, at the same time like nothing compares to just like sharing a conversation, sharing like a laugh with someone. So like
couldn't agree more.
It definitely like makes me just like rethink it and like let's go to the park, let's go skate, let's go do something.
And it's interesting because it's a conversation I've had a lot as an editor, and often of younger women. I think your generation are coming into the workforce super digitally savvy, explaining apps that I'd never heard of, coming in with concepts that are so innovative. But I think one of the things that sometimes I work with young women and girls with is the ability to have a phone call and not a DM, or go for a coffee and with somebody that you're not super comfortable with. And I think that is definitely there's a want of that sometimes with because you've grown up completely digitally native.
Right.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Jessica and I recently, I barely talk to friends on the phone anymore. Everything's over text. But Jessica and I recently had like a 2-3 hour phone call one night. Everything.
And that reminded you of being 18, I bet you, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right.
That's what I said to her. I think I texted her right after to say that I haven't done that since I was a teenager. It was so cathartic. We were talking about life, work, but it was amazing. And nothing really replaces actual contact and conversation.
Maryclare, how's your first year at Brown been? So you're studying STEM?
Yeah. I think I'm studying biochemistry. But, I'm kind of having a college career crisis. But it's okay. We're going to figure it out. But
it gets better.
Yeah, I hope. My first year was actually really good. The first semester was a bit rough, the transition into college. But the people at Brown were really, really supportive. I have a lot of mentors there and people who are always willing to reach out to you if you need anything. Just like simple check-ins like, hey, like, how are you doing and stuff really meant a lot to me during my first year. And yeah, so it was really good.
And if the people in this room or watching could do anything for an 18-year-old girl, what would it be? This is for you too, Julie.
I don't know. I guess personally for me, I'm a firm believer in showing people that you care about them, even no matter how little. So I guess just saying hi or smiling at someone if you see them around before, just be like, hey, how are you doing? I really think that would be helpful and kind and, hopefully make the world a better place, kind of, if possible. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a simple act of kindness really goes a long way. Mm-hmm. Just like a message that says, hey, I was thinking about you. Like, how did your final go? Yeah. Or just like, hey, I read this book and you were talking about it the other day. You should read it. I think just something as simple as that really goes a long way.
Brilliant. I think we're going to throw it open to questions, which I hope this very curious and inquisitive bunch of people have on a Friday evening. Do we have mics? Oh, you just project. Come on, guys. I'll start calling on people. Okay, here we go. Yeah, project.
I'm curious about the WhatsApp group. Are you thinking about traveling? The two of you. Are you thinking about traveling to different places and meeting those people?
Definitely. No, yeah, definitely. One of them actually, two of them, they already met each other, and they just sent us pictures of yeah, it was Tika. She went to Mexico. And the photographer from Mexico just showed her around her community and stuff. And I thought it was really beautiful because it just opened so many doors, just because we have that access to understanding their stories through this project, but actually living their experience, I think that's just amazing. So having them tell me my doors are open, it just means so much. So
it's on the bucket list. Whose country do you want to visit first from the project?
I don't know. I'm really intrigued. India, maybe Australia.
Amazing.
I was really interested in was it the Australian story with the girl that skates?
Yes.
Yeah. I wanna play her in Skate.
This is why we have this up here. We have a skating injury.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yes, I was curious, Julie. How long did you shoot Maryclare Floor, and then how did your pictures change from the first moment, your first pictures together to the end?
Great question.
What was it, 2 months maybe?
Yeah, about 2 months.
Yeah, I was just I would just go to her house every day, sit with her family, go home with her after school, just spend as much time as possible, because I was a student at the Bronx Documentary Center, and honestly, one of the best things I learned there is the more time you spend with your subject, the the more vulnerable they become. So the first few pictures was just like portraits of like her like just like smiling at the camera, and like, what should I do? Like, should I sit down? Should I stand up? And it was just like, you don't have to do anything. And then like as I just spent more time with her, I was more of a fly on the wall, which is what I wanted. And I got like those really intimate portraits with her and her mom and her sisters and her brother. So I thought that as I spent more time with her, the portraits definitely became more intimate.
Maryclare, was there any part of your life that you were either didn't want to share or were reluctant to share at the start?
Not really, no. It's pretty much an open book. Like, whatever she asked me, I answered. But yeah, I didn't mind hiding anything. Like, I was pretty open.
It was really interesting. So we asked the photographers to record all of the interviews. So they submitted audio from their interviews and also text. And so we listened to hours and hours and hours of tape. And there were many times when we sort of looked at each other and were like, I don't think we could have gotten, as professional journalists, the same answers, because we're like coming at it from just a different generation. And so there were many times when I felt like it really did benefit the story for you guys to be talking to each other.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that comes across in it. And I think it's something, as anybody that works in the media, our editors always worry about somebody parachuting in to tell somebody else's story. And in this one, what was lovely was the friendships, the WhatsApp groups, the friendships between the photographers and the subjects was really unique and something we haven't seen in a while. Is there any plans for take 2 for the Times, or it's really about the book now?
So, you all have a copy of the print special section on your seat, and then also a little postcard that has Maryclare's portraits on it. And we have a book coming out in November with Abrams and the New York Times that will be a really beautiful hard copy of what this all is. And so that's kind of phase 2 of this. But, you know, I could see down the line checking back in with our subjects, like, who knows what we'll be doing in 10 years. But yeah, exactly.
I love that.
This is 28, maybe?
What do you think 28 is going to look like?
I don't know. I don't even know what next Friday is going to look like.
28 is the age I always tell everyone I am. So this whole room can leave with 28 is the constant. Been 28 for a while. Any other questions?
I have a question for the editors. How long did this project take, and was there a moment in the project concept where you were like, okay, let's go big or let's go home?
Like,
it's a great question.
I quit. I mean, it was a lot.
It was a lot.
Who did you have to get buy-in from to that point? Like, who bought you? You're the gender editor. This is obviously one of the big projects you were doing last year. How, for those, you know, photographers in the room or people that are pitching, how did you get buy-in for such a project of this scale?
We had very aggressive bosses who were willing to go to bat. No, I mean, I think that, you know, this is what the New York Times
a force
does.
Of nature too.
Thank you.
The things she can do with a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and Sharon kept our spreadsheet, which was critical. No, the Times wants to do ambitious photojournalism. What the Times had not done before was a zine. Yeah. We wanted to make this a zine. Like, we thought a digital zine would be very fun. It would be sort of like a throwback to our generation, but also represent the sort of aesthetic of now. This is a tabloid-size special print section. We hadn't really done a lot of those in the past. So actually the biggest challenges, I think, were conversations about, like, is it really okay to have this letter on an angle like that? Or, like, this doesn't have a clear edge. Like, it's a little jagged, and that's how we want it. But that's not really Times style traditionally. So there was a lot of, you know, healthy back and forth in that realm. Yeah. But I think that, you know, we knew from the start that we wanted to go big with this, and
kind of
Anya, wait a second. Didn't you start a zine when you were 15 in your bedroom?
Yeah, when I was ages 15 through 17, I had a zine called Love that I ran out of my bedroom in Connecticut. I had a typewriter.
What was the circulation on that one?
11.
Right.
I I did turn a small profit at one point, like that, you know, a few dollars, but I was proud of that. And I think it's because I got my mother's also a retired therapist, and she sort of taught me the value of storytelling and how everyone has a story to tell. You just sort of have to ask. So from that, I got very interested in making my zine and very passionate about it, and that led me to the New York Times, making a zine in the New York Times. So that was a really cool and exhilarating feeling, and hopefully, you know, all the young writers out there, you know, will one day, you know, do this.
And you're a generation of photographers. Everybody's a photographer in your generation. How do you break through that noise and be like, no, this is my vocation, rather than everybody that's 18 and has a phone, everybody now thinks of themselves as a mini photographer. How do you make sure that you stand up and say, no, this is my career?
I'm not sure, honestly, but I guess I'd say, like, when you have the right preparation, because anybody can just, like, take out their phone and snap a picture, but when you prepare for it, when you contact other people, you ask for help, you, like, make sure you have that platform, I think that's what makes it, like, that much more meaningful, because it just shows that you really worked for it.
Where would you like to see yourself in when you're 28 in your career?
I guess I'm in film and TV right now, and, like, someone always asks me, oh, so you want to be a director? And I'm always like, not really. Like, and they're like, so what do you want to do? And I'm always like, well, I just want to tell stories. So hopefully when I'm 28, I'm still telling stories. And honestly, whether that's documentary or on set, like, telling stories.
I love that. Other questions? This lady here.
You guys want to talk about that?
Yeah. So my mentor is actually sitting right there in the back. Her name is Bianca. Bianca's amazing. She was my teacher at the Bronx Documentary Center, and so I already had that, like, close relationship with her. She helped me get into college and, like, apply, do all my applications and stuff. So I already had that trust with her. And
where's Bianca? Put your hand up.
Yes. And so having that guidance from her, like, hey, like, I don't know if I should do this, or how do I like file these pictures? How do I send them? So just, like, knowing that I can go to someone and not be judged for not knowing, because sometimes it's, like, embarrassing, like, hey, like, I didn't know how to do this. So, but just having that, like, hey, Bianca, like, how do I do this? Oh, this is how you do it. This is how you get it done.
That's such an important part of this project, I think,
right.
The mentorship. How have you heard from a lot of the mentors, Jessica, Anya?
We were in touch with everyone. I mean, there was, like, constant communication between all parties, which was many parties. And I think that a lot of these mentor-mentee relationships and photographer-subject relationships have really endured and continued. And there are some that are continuing to work on projects together and expanding on the projects that were in this one. So, yeah, I think that, you know, mentorship is critical in any industry, and probably particularly in the photo industry and in journalism. Like, I certainly had mentors that were critical to my success.
Completely. And I think especially at this age of 18, 19, 20, when you're so early on in your career, I remember, you know, sitting next to sub-editors going through line by line by line on what I should be doing, and some people need to take that time. So Bianca, thank you so much for
thank you, Bianca,
for being a mentor. I think it's super important. Did you see, Anya, the development of the photos, even you worked on this for a couple of months, but the younger photographers that you got in, you're seeing their photographs week on week, month on month, and seeing that improve as you were getting more submissions?
I wasn't really front lines. I wish Sandra, the photography editor, was here to talk about that. Yeah.
We saw some of them, but they were being filtered through our photo editor, primarily. And we certainly, you know, there were parts where we wanted to go back, and we asked if people could focus in on X, Y, or Z more. And we tried to provide guidance. And I think the photos shifted. And the other interesting thing was, you know, you guys submitted like hundreds and hundreds of, each person submitted hundreds and hundreds of photos, and we had to choose like 3.
Right.
And that was a really difficult process. And that's actually one of the nice things about the book. Shouts to our editor, who's also in the audience. Is that we got to make use of a lot of the stuff that didn't make it in. You know, when you're scrolling on something, like it used to be that you could just put all of the stuff that was picked over from the print edition on the internet.
Right.
And that's not the way we do things anymore. We are very selective. It's highly curated. We don't want your thumb to get tired of scrolling. And yet there was a ton of really beautiful, amazing interviews and photography that didn't make it in. So November 12th.
Get the book.
nytimes.com/this is18.
Who do you want to pick up that book? Because obviously there's an automatic interest for young women to be, let me have a look at other young women around the world, but who do you really want to pick up the book and learn from it?
I mean, everyone. Like, I think that, you know, this is probably not what the marketing materials say, but like, this is a book for everyone. Like, we should all understand different people's perspectives around the world, and this is like a nice cut of a way to do that. I think that parents can buy this for kids. I don't think it's just for girls. I think boys can enjoy this as well. And it's like a beautiful, high, thick stock photography book as well, so I hope that photographers enjoy it.
That said, would be very honored if teenage girls want to read this book.
Right.
We get all of our life validation through teen girls.
Hopefully, what other questions do we have? This lady here in the orange. Yeah. Yes.
Did you ever find yourself trying to portray a part of yourself or project a part of yourself on Maryclare?
No, I think I just naturally found myself in them because I definitely didn't want to include myself like in her story. I wanted her story to just like emerge on its own. But like inevitably, like I found myself relating to so many things, just like how she values her family and how like she's so close to like her little brother and her sisters and the things that she has to do when she comes home from school. So I just naturally just found myself like already in her story. But yeah.
Other questions?
Right over there.
Here we go.
I see a hand.
I see a hand hanging out over here.
On the floor, yes.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Okay, I have a question for Julie.
Yeah.
Do you think that being a woman of color affects the way you do view photography, and if so?
I wouldn't say it affects it. I think just like the product of the photography like changes because I think that it was really wonderful to have that like access and have the New York Times come to me and like pick Maryclare's story because I just thought that it opened so many doors for people to really see what's going on in the Bronx and really see what the Bronx is capable of. And I really appreciate that. So it wouldn't change how I do my work, only in the way that maybe I want to work harder to just prove myself. But I think it's more about the product and about like people like really understanding what really goes on.
Who has inspired you in your work in film and photography?
Michael Camber. No, yeah, for those who don't know, Michael Camber is the director of the Bronx Documentary Center, and he's taught me everything I know and more.
Maryclare, you went into STEM, which is a topic that we're hearing constantly that we want to get more women, in particular women of color, into. What made you pick that path?
I think partially, or maybe like a very, very small percent, I feel like when I was younger, I would always hear, oh, you know, become a doctor. But as I got into high school, I actually realized that bio is really something that I'm really passionate about. I've done some internships with Mount Sinai and like really dove into STEM, and I realized that this is something that I'm actually passionate about, and I'm looking forward to pursuing more in the future. But yeah, I think that's how it happened.
What other questions do we have from the audience? Here we go.
How do you determine, this is for the editors, how do you determine what series will be turned into a book?
It's a little out of our hands.
Anne.
I'd like them to all be turned into books.
So
and
I think
our books editor.
Yeah, we would like them all to be turned. I mean, we love books. It depends on the project. You know, like we think a lot about format. So with this, it was like, was a zine actually the right format to deliver this? And in the digital version, you know, what was the way we wanted it to display? And on Instagram, if we were going to do, you know, exclusive content there that didn't appear on site and didn't appear in the print section, what was that going to look like? And so we think a lot about who the audience is, and realistically, the audience that's reading online, the audience that's on our Instagram, the audience reading that print section, and the audience for our book are probably pretty different. And so one of the ways we think about this is how can we take the product and bring it to a new audience? And so in this case, I think it really lent itself to the format of print. But there has to be something to add to it as well. Like no one wants to buy the same exact thing that already exists for free on the New York Times, so you have to provide some added content.
Any other questions? I've got one back here.
Definitely. It definitely changed like how I approached the project, because like I said, like it made me want to work that much more harder, and it made me want to just like I don't think I even had to like try to make Maryclare look good, because she's just an amazing person, and I knew this since like the 8th grade. Like I always knew that Maryclare was like the smartest in the classroom, like always so clever, and I didn't really have to try, and she made my job really easy. But I definitely wanted to present her like to the best of my ability, just to show that like women of color are capable of being in STEM. They're capable of working for the New York Times, or you know, like telling these stories. So it definitely changed how I approached the project.
Do you feel that your generation are very conscious of how you curate your image online and on social? Because this came across as super authentic, very much. But do you think the girls of your generation are very conscious of how they are presented online in photographs and videos?
Definitely, because your profile is yourself in a way. Like if I give you my Instagram right now, what you see is like what you think of me, what you leave with. So if I give a stranger my Instagram, I want them to think that I'm like this amazing person, and like I'm obviously gonna publish like the best selfie, the best like outfit picture, the best like picture out of the bunch. So I definitely think it does. But you know, sometimes like with this project, it was really nice because like it really allowed me and Maryclare to just like get real and get like just like so raw with it.
Other questions?
So, am I getting this right? That you met Maryclare in school?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
From junior high?
Yeah, Maryclare, actually, I think the first time I ever spoke to you, I asked you to tutor me in calculus. And that didn't go well, but like she did her best though. I ended up dropping the class, but she was so nice about it, and like the little that she did, like, cause we actually only met like 4 times, like, but like those 4 times, I think I understood more calculus than like that entire semester. Like, she's such a good teacher.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have? I'm going to use the 5 minutes that we have left. Really, kind of, I'd love to hear more about what it's like to be 18 today in New York, in Rhode Island. What is it like to be an 18-year-old girl?
Well,
you're not 18 anymore, right?
19,
you're
correction.
19. Sorry, 19.
You should go first.
Maryclare.
Okay.
How's that transition, even from 18 to 19, been for you?
Well, I'm pretty much the same, I think. But I definitely think I've gotten a bit wiser, you know, due to college, I guess. But sorry, what was the question?
Well, so I'm digging in. What was that
Okay.
college experience like for you? What was leaving a very protective mom in the Bronx and striking out on your own in Rhode Island? How was that experience for you?
I'm really grateful for it because it gave me the opportunity to learn things that I actually, I guess, like to do. I guess I got to discover myself a lot. I realized I like to dance, and like I'm actually really good at it.
Nice.
So that's something I figured out in college. And I guess I also learned how to put myself first, because back home, as the oldest, I always had to look out for my siblings or think about my parents and making sure things are good for them when they came home. But in school, I got to put myself first for once, and that was nice. So I appreciate that.
How many siblings do you have?
Oh, I have 3, 2 sisters and a brother. Yeah.
What about you, Julie? How's the last year been? What have you learned about yourself as a young woman?
I guess for me, I've just like learned to ask for help, and I think that in high school a lot of the time, like I'm the oldest, so always taking care of my brother and making sure he's good and like doing my homework. And there's always been like, I've never really like asked for help, and now that I'm in college, just like asking my friends like, hey, like, you know, I don't feel good today, like let's talk, and just like venting with them, or like emailing my professor like, hey, I didn't really understand that lesson, like, do you think we can meet today? And just asking for help just goes such a long way. So I think I've learned that this past year.
Jessica, what did you learn from these 18-year-old women?
Oh my gosh.
And Anya, get ready, because the same question for you.
I think that, you know, I often think about like what I would tell my 18-year-old self. And I think that this was an incredibly assured, confident group of young women.
So confident. I mean, I just
And
remember being not this confident at
Yeah.
all at this age, right?
And I haven't met all of them in person, but I think a lot of the confidence came through on the page. And so I often think what I would tell my younger self is like, trust your gut. Because I spent so long kind of doubting myself and not being sure of what I thought, or actually being sure, but then asking for other people's opinions rather than trusting my own. And I think like your gut pretty much knows what you should do. And so I think I learned a little bit of that from these young women.
Anya?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I was very impressed by them, and it gave me a lot of hope in these very challenging times to know that this rising generation is so engaged. So we're really banking on you guys. No pressure.
No pressure.
And I guess the thing that I would tell my younger self is to, you know, you said something similar, Julie, just to be kind and compassionate. And it sounds sort of dark, but it's like everyone suffers a little bit, you know. It's part of like learning people's stories. You learn that they suffer in small or large ways. And so, you know, even that jerk, you know, out there is like possibly a jerk because they suffer. So to have just kindness and compassion towards
And I think that was one of the big takeaways from earlier when I asked you both what you could do to help an 18-year-old girl in your life, and simple acts of kindness. Thank you so much, Anya,
Thank
Jessica,
you.
Maryclare, and Julie. Thanks for joining us.